more convivial, I find, and we want this one to be quite interactive. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lucie Lalumière. I'm the president of Interactive Ontario, and Stephanie is helping us with a lot of our events and communications at this point. So thank you, Stephanie, for helping organize today. So today is about mental health and what we can do to help our employees during these very, very strange times. And we know that our industry is well organized to work from home as much as we can. So it does provide additional challenges if we're thinking of continuing with the work from home or a mix of physical and work from home. So we're very lucky because Jennifer was highly recommended by Ubisoft because Jennifer is working with Ubisoft right now and other clients. So I'm going to go through Jennifer's bio. Jennifer Landry is an occupational therapist with Gowan Consulting. Jennifer has more than 25 years of experience with mental health and work as her focus. In fact, work has been her focus for the past 16 years. So Jennifer, you mean that, mental health in the workplace?
Yeah. So mental health and work has been my focus for the last 16 years. Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
So thank you. So Jennifer works with small businesses, insurance companies, financial institutions, tech companies, and also for the last few years with the game and interactive digital media industry. Jennifer works with individuals and groups. She's passionate about collaborating with workplace stakeholders to provide customized solutions that lead to sustainable stay at work or return to work solution, or a mix of both. So without further ado, Jennifer.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks so much. I'm really pleased to be here today. I was thrilled to hear from Stephanie, and because this gives me an opportunity to talk about something that that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's workplace wellness. So today our focus will really be, workplace strategies for mental health, but with the lens of transitioning to the new normal. Now that we're kind of, what is the new normal even, I guess would be the question, but things are opening up now in Ontario. And so we might be looking at, as I think Lucy said, a kind of mix of still working from home and potentially going back into the workplace. So I'm just going to share a bit of a presentation here. It says the host disabled participant screen sharing. So I'm wondering.
Let me just look at the settings here.
We can, sorry, maybe I should have
No, I think it's the settings here, so bear with me for a sec. Okay, you should be able to do that now.
Okay. Okay, let me just make sure I'm sharing the right one here. Okay, so you can see transitioning to the new normal. It's probably not the presentation yet, but it will be. You're seeing,
I see this, but I see an overlay.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you see an overlay?
Oh, it says give subtitles a try. I see. Oh. Is there still an overlay?
No, I think it's good.
I think we're good, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just get rid of the chat here so that I can I'm just trying to get the chat out of the way for me because it's blocking part of my screen. Okay, well, anyway, we'll make do with that. So anyway, I hope all of you are really staying well and that your loved ones are safe and healthy as well, and that you've been doing some things to support your own mental health was one of the ways that I wanted to start today. So employees that have been kind of working from home and sheltering in place have had to adjust to the demands associated with this change. And just as kind of some of us are feeling like we've kind of adjusted, or we're in the process of feeling like we're more adjusted, now we might be soon asked to return to the workplace. And so if returning to the workplace kind of meant returning to kind of their normal work in a very typical work environment, the work environment that we were used to prior to COVID, this might have resulted, like being off for this period of time might have resulted in a very minor kind of taxing of their resources to adapt to the change. Is there still an overlay, guys, or is it okay?
It's good.
It's good? Okay, because stuff keeps popping up for me for some reason, but anyway. However, what we're doing now is in returning to work when our workplaces reopen, or when there's a mix of working from home and workplaces reopening, will likely not be returning to the same kind of workplace, or even perhaps the job done the same way that it was done prior to COVID. So it may be like starting a new job, being uncertain about how to even get safely to work from a commute perspective, how to manage socializing with our colleagues differently, how to navigate the work environment safely, how to adjust to the changes in how work will be done, as well as just being able to find information and support to allay any fears and concerns. And please, as we go along, feel free to kind of chime in. Again, Lucy indicated, and it's certainly the case, that I'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. So any comments, questions, please chime in. I'm not looking at the chat function, so so if there's somebody who could kind of highlight that for me, if there are questions or comments, that would be great.
We will, Stephanie or I will.
Perfect. Okay. So from a mental health perspective, we talk about mental health being on a continuum, from kind of being healthy to being ill. And there's grades in between there. So when we're healthy, we're kind of in the green zone. And when we're ill, that might be the red zone. But there's also kind of the yellow and orange zones as well, where we're not quite at the ill stage, but we're not at the healthy stage. We're starting to be what we would call a little bit injured. So not necessarily fully ill, but a bit injured. And all of us are at different stages on that healthcare or that mental health continuum. And so you can imagine that given our current context and situation, we can expect that there will be a variety of reactions to returning to the workplace, a variety of reactions by employees returning to the workplace, or returning to kind of some sort of sense of normalcy once things start opening up. So when we're preparing for a safe return to the workplace, I think it's really important for us to keep in mind that we're all kind of at a different place on that mental health continuum. So all of our, our employees will be at a different place, that there's a ton of uncertainty, and that we're all kind of in different ways and to different degrees dealing with a sense of loss of normalcy, right? A loss of kind of walking into the workplace may feel like walking into a very unfamiliar situation or a very, very unfamiliar environment. So that's really important. And then all of us kind of vary quite a bit about how we tend to cope with change. Some of us embrace change, some of us takes a little bit longer to bring us along. So we'll be dealing with all kinds of those things when we're returning to the workplace. And just in general with this, with the situation with COVID. So we might see people who are really eager to return to work. They're eager to see their colleagues, to get out of the house, to get away from family members or loved ones, all those sorts of things. But then we'll have people who may be eager to return to the workplace, but still quite apprehensive or still a bit apprehensive. Then we may have colleagues, employees who are really apprehensive, who are very anxious about the return, who are worried because of all the uncertainty. They're worried about different things. And then we may have the employee who does not want to return to the workplace, and they may be requesting kind of wanting to work from home over the long term. And then we might also have employees who are still dealing with a lack of childcare, with school being canceled for the year, and with camps, as far as I'm aware, still being kind of up in the air from a summer camp perspective. Or we might be dealing with kind of elder care or care of some sort of somebody in our household, or one of our loved ones who needs some additional help during this period. So I think it's safe to say that we can expect different reactions. And what I would suggest, one of the key things, if you are a leader or a manager, is to start having conversations now with your employees, with the people that report to you. And those conversations can be kind of, you know, how are things going currently for you? What are some of the you know, kind of challenges that you're confronting working from home? How are you feeling about returning to work? And just getting the conversation started, because, you know, I'm not entirely sure when each of the workplaces will be opening up, but you want to start the conversation sooner rather than later, because it probably will feel pretty fast to some of our employees, how fast things go from sheltering in place and working from home to getting back into maybe a mix, or working or being back into the studio or into the workplace. And I guess it's really, the other thing that I would say is it's really important to discuss expectations very openly. And by that, I mean, not only the employee's expectations, but the manager's expectations or the employer's expectations of kind of, you know, just so that everybody is clear on what's going to be expected is, I think is an important conversation to have. So that you can have a sense, again, of what the employee is expecting about this period of transitioning back to work, but also that you're very clear on what your expectations are with respect to performance, with respect to attendance, what have you. And I think the key here, as in, excuse me, too much talking today, maybe. And I think as in any communication, I think it's really important for us to listen and to try to listen in very specific ways. So I think we've covered this a little bit. I'll go through it quite quickly. Is, you know, who can we expect? We can expect employees with anxiety, and that anxiety may range from mild to very severe. We can expect employees who have health and safety concerns, who may have underlying health conditions that make this an even more like feeling like it's more of a precarious situation or a more anxiety or distressing. We'll have employees again with childcare responsibilities or issues, elder care. And then those employees who might have developed a taste for working remotely or working from home. So I think we can expect, and there's probably others. This isn't an exhaustive list, clearly. And this is, there's a bit of overlap between these two slides, but I think it's fair to say that these are the questions that I'm fielding. These are the frequently asked questions regarding return to work that I'm fielding, that our company is fielding from employees, from managers, from leaders, basically about concerns about being able to work, to stay safe and healthy at work, being able to physically distance at work. So I know some of the workplaces that I'm in, you know, the work stations were pretty tight, were pretty close to one another. So I know there's concerns about being able to physically distance. Concerned about the level of comfort at the workstation, like just how comfortable I am being at my workstation and being around other people. Concerned about my ability to focus on my work, right, is another big one that I'm getting a lot from my clients is, you know, when I'm so kind of, you know, worried about like, what is the person next to me doing regarding physically distancing? Like, I know what they're doing maybe here at work, but what are they doing outside of work? Are they being smart? Are they adhering to all the different directives? And then concerned about, say, a public transit, getting to work safely if public transit is something. And that's pretty important in kind of the more urban or city kind of environments where maybe, you know, driving isn't something that the person typically did. They might not even have a car. So how do I stay safe on public transit, getting to and from work? And then I'm concerned about working with my team again. And then I'm still concerned about catching COVID and maybe bringing it home to my family or loved ones or roommates for that matter. Any questions or comments so far about any of that?
In fact, Jennifer, somebody is wondering, and I know she's not the only one, will your deck be available?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd be happy to send it along. Yeah. Okay. And so this is just a bit of when an employee is going through a challenging time, as I think, you know, we will see employees going through kind of a challenging time with this transition. from working to home to either a mix or getting back into the studio or workplace. As a manager, as a leader, or as a colleague, quite frankly, we might see some signs or symptoms that somebody's having some difficulty from a mental health or from a coping perspective. And so I just put this slide up quickly for us to get a sense of, like, we might see things, or we might hear kind of our colleagues or the people that we manage talking about kind of bodily things. So having more frequent headaches, feeling more tired, those sorts of things. Some of these we won't have, we won't know unless they're verbalizing it, but there's kind of the bodily sensation of stress and anxiety stress or anxiety or distress. And then there's the thinking. So we might see that colleagues are having maybe a bit more difficulty making decisions, or they're making hasty decisions. The way that they're processing information seems a little bit slower than what was typical. We might be wondering about kind of whether their judgment is as kind of solid as it was prior. So all these things are just things that you could kind of look for with respect to the people that you're working with, that may be, and I'm not saying that it is an indication, but it may be indicating that they're having a little bit of trouble with coping, or they're feeling overwhelmed, or that, you know, their mental health is a bit more kind of being challenged a bit more. And then there's the emotions. You might notice somebody's a bit more irritated or angry. They're more impatient, irritability. They might, one of the things that is sometimes surprising to people is a loss of confidence can result from kind of stress and anxiety. And then finally, behavior. And some of these things we don't have access, we hopefully don't really know about at work, like a loss of sex drive. But you might notice things like a smoker might be going out for more breaks to smoke. There might be more accident prone, those sorts of things. So a lot of these, the behaviors that are listed here, we might not have direct access to, but you might see the person being tired, or they might comment on how sleeping is difficult.
Jennifer, are you going to go through how to address it when we notice something?
Yeah, so that's here kind of, I think, the next step. Good question. Is kind of, okay, so when we do notice something happening, I think that it's number one is don't ignore it, which sometimes is our impulse as managers or leaders or colleagues, is to just say, oh, I'm sure somebody else is helping, or somebody else is supporting or dealing with that. But to address it in as respectful and, you know, appropriate, again, not like you're going to become a counselor or a support person in that way, but addressing it directly by saying, I've been noticing, and then indicating what you're seeing. So in a kind of supportive way. So not in a public kind of forum, but taking the person aside and just saying, I've been noticing this and I'm really concerned, and I'm wondering if there's anything that I can do here at work to help. Again, not pushing the person to necessarily disclose or to say anything that they might not be comfortable with, but just basically saying, this is what I'm noticing, and then bringing the direction to, is there anything we can do here at work to support you? And here are the other resources that we have. So whether it's an EAP or an EFAP, like an Employee and Family Assistance Program, or what have you. But just kind of, that would be my first kind of tip for you, is to like approach it directly in a respectful and kind way, and let the person, you know, kind of talk. Listen with what I call your full ear, which is empathy, attention, and respect. So we're not on our computer or scrolling on our phone while we're having these kind of conversations, but giving the person our full attention, and, you know, doing what we can to kind of put ourselves in their place. Listen for the reason why they're concerned. So sometimes that's not as easy as somebody coming in and saying directly, I'm concerned because of X. You might have to let them talk a little bit and be a bit of a detective to figure out, okay, what is really underlying the concern? What is the reason why they are concerned about coming back to work, or about the situation that they find themselves in once they're back at work? It may be that they feel like the workstations are still too tight, or what have you. So trying to listen for the reason for their concern is really important. And work together to find solutions. So work-based solutions. Again, you're not the counselor, you're not a therapist, but are there certain things that you guys, that you and the employee can work on? If you're a manager or a leader, what can you kind of work on together to find a solution that will work for both parties? So coming up with kind of a win-win wherever possible. Again, I mentioned discussing expectations, so that would be performance expectations, attendance expectations as openly as possible, but trying to be, you know, see if there is some flexibility that can be built into expectations for somebody that's struggling, at least that's coming back and you're noticing that they're struggling with that transition. Direct them toward any resources that either the company has, like an employee and family assistance program, or you know, any of to HR, if HR can direct them to any of the resources that might be available. A lot of
Jennifer,
yeah.
It's Lucy. So one thing with our industry, we have many SMEs. They don't have an HR department. They don't have resources like that. So any help there throughout your presentation would be appreciated.
Okay, sure. And so what I will also do is, and I think it's embedded in this, but if it isn't, there are some programs that the government has opened up recently that are excellent programs from a mental health. They're not necessarily specific to work, but they could be tailored to anything, whether it's work or home life or relationships. So I'll be sure to make sure that I give specific examples of resources. So there's a program called Bounce Back, for example, that's an Ontario government funded. There's another one called the Big White Wall that are really great resources that are very action-oriented resources. So the person is actually a practical strategy type resources for the person who's really struggling.
Thank you. That's going to be super helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And then obviously implementing appropriate kind of policies that will provide reassurance. So yesterday, for example, my company, we went through an entire kind of hour-long session talking about when we're going back into the workplaces, what is that going to look like? When we're going, because I go to multiple workplaces, I also go into people's homes. So what's that going to look like, and what are the policies around that? The policies that the company, in collaboration with the employees, have come up to make us feel kind of safe, to make us feel like we can do that in a safe and healthy way. And then following up and following through. So this would be when you have a conversation with somebody who's, you know, either they've approached you or you've approached them, making sure that there's kind of an action plan at the end of that meeting, like what they'll do, what you will do, and follow up to make sure that it's not just kind of, we have this conversation and then what happens after that, you know, is kind of left. I always suggest to people that you even book a date to follow up during that initial meeting, you know, so can we meet in a week's time or 2 weeks' time and revisit type thing. So any questions about that? No? Okay, I'm almost done, I promise. But I did want to touch on resiliency just quickly because I think that that's key. And basically what resiliency refers to, and maybe we already know this, but it refers to one's ability to maintain one's balance and well-being despite change, challenge, and difficult experiences. And I think most of us can agree that this has been at least somewhat of a challenge, if not a big challenge, this period of time with the pandemic. And in order to, the good news is though we all have resiliency. Again, it's on a bit of a continuum, but the good news is we can do certain things and we can encourage our employees to do things or our colleagues to do things that help us develop more resiliency. So practicing a variety of resilient behaviors that will provide us with some healthy options during stressful or uncertain times. Again, this is just a brief overview of like, there's different types of resiliency. So social resiliency, one way to, you know, maintain a resiliency is through that social connection, avoiding isolation. So connecting with family and friends. Physical resiliency are things like sleeping, getting enough sleep, so that's 7 to 9 hours, eating well, reasonably well most of the time, and getting exercise. So the rule of thumb is at least 20 minutes per day of heart pumping exercise, because anything that's good for your heart is good for your head, I always say, not only from a mental health perspective, but also cognition. So our thinking, our problem solving, our processing. So, 20 minutes of heart pumping exercise is really protective from a mental health, but also cognitive health perspective. Thinking resiliency relates to kind of creative problem solving and trying to be balanced in our thinking. We have a tendency when we're stressed or when we're in challenging times to think quite negatively. And so counterbalancing that with counting our blessings or thinking positively. And then emotional resiliency, I've just listed talking it out with a trusted loved one, friend, colleague, manager, using your EFAP, or if you have access to OT, a session or two with an OT, it can't hurt. And then spiritual resiliency would be all that mindfulness, meditation, and faith-based. And I will give you some, here are some of the things that that we at Gowan offer that some companies have. I understand from what Lucy's saying, we might not have like a health and safety team or an HR team. But again, I've listed some online government funded resources as well here. And Ability CBT is a great one for depression and anxiety in particular. And you may not know what the diagnosis is with the colleague or the employee that you're, but it's certainly something that you could, suggest they explore. Virtual sessions with an occupational therapist, that's a little bit of a plug for us, I guess, and for me. We have something going right now called the Happiness Challenge that just lists kind of 5 things that you can do per day. And you're going to ask me what those 5 things are, and I'm going to draw a blank. But we have a happiness challenge that we've been doing for a long time, even prior to COVID. But we'll try to send along the deck so that there are links so that you can take a look yourself at that happiness challenge and see if it's something that either you or you want to share with your colleagues and employees. And then the other thing is we have a ton of stuff at Gowan that we've been doing related to like working from home, sheltering in place, but also now transitioning to things opening up a little bit. And so I'll make sure that you have links, and some of them are like the toolkit and the webinar are free. And there's lots of great stuff in there if you wanted to hear anything further. Here are some great self-care apps that I recommend a lot. Some of you might be aware of them, have access to them from work, maybe not. Most of these apps will have free elements. Like some of them are subscription-based, but they have free elements that will kind of give you a little bit of a taste of the app, and you can use the free elements forever. It's just a more restricted kind of suite of things that you can do. So there's Headspace, I really like, Calm, I really like, and 10% Happier. In fact, I like all 3 so much. I have 3 subscriptions and I cycle between the 3 depending on how I'm feeling in the day. I'm not suggesting that anybody needs to do that. That might be a bit of overkill, but I'm doing it professionally and personally, right? Like I want to know that these things are good if I'm going to recommend them. Sanvelo is a more, it is kind of mindfulness and meditation, but it's also cognitive restructuring. So getting some of that balanced thinking, working on that balanced thinking. Mindshift is an anxiety app. Breath Ball is a simple guided breathing where it's a ball that expands and contracts. And then there's the 5-minute journal, which is a kind of a gratitude journal that just takes a few minutes a day. So those are some resources and suggestions. I'll open it up. I hope that wasn't too long.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So anyone has a starting question?
I just had so much to say.
I'm going to ask you one. So what do you recommend somebody do when he or she realizes that an employee has issues, but the employee doesn't want to open up or address the issue.
That's a tough one, and really what I recommend most often to people is just keep trying, but not making yourself a pest. Certainly not trying every day or anything, but just trying to touch base regularly, because it certainly is the case that we can lead a horse to water, but we can't force that horse to drink when it comes to our mental health. But you know, connecting regularly and in as respectful a way as possible to say, this is what I'm noticing and I'm concerned. And while, you know, I'm not suggesting that I can help with these sorts of things, again, is there anything we can do here at work to support you? And here are the resources. And that's really, there's not a lot more that, unfortunately, Lucy, I wish there was a better answer for that, but I've never come across it. But if somebody's really not resentful, maybe resentful, but resistant, it's just kind of in a supportive a way, continuing to have conversations about it. And even sometimes, you know, it depends on how comfortable you are. Everybody's different. Some people feel okay about disclosing, you know, like I was struggling with X and I called, you know, I don't know whether, if there is an EAP, maybe there isn't, but if I called the EAP and it was really helpful, or I've used different resources and really found that it made a difference. You don't have to get into the details, but just admitting that it's okay to ask for help, and that, you know, even very successful people, in fact, you know, some of the success may be as a result of asking for help when needed. Trying to destigmatize asking for help, I think.
That's a good point.
Not everybody's comfortable with disclosure.
We have a question in the chat room. Are there legal issues with employees opening up too much?
So are there legal issues? I'm not a lawyer, but what I would always, when I am having conversations with managers, I always say that that you should maybe preface the conversation by saying, I don't need to know any of the details, right? But what I'm here to do is to find out if there's anything that we can do here at work to help, and to provide you with a host of resources. Like you could even, you know, the sheet that we just saw, here's a host of resources that you can follow up on, because, and I don't necessarily need to know what is happening. Avoid avoid at all costs trying to create the sense that the person has to disclose, or that they need to tell you what's going on. So it might not be opening up with, so what's going on? But rather opening up with I've noticed these things, I'm concerned, I care about you, what can I do as a manager to support you here with your tasks at work or what have you? And here are some resources that you could use to help you outside of kind of what we can do here at work. I hope that is helpful.
Yes, it is. Any questions? Please, please ask, because it's a great opportunity that we have to have Jennifer here.
Yeah, I guess I don't know whether I actually answered the legal part. I don't think there are any legal ramifications as long as you're not asking the wrong questions. And so you keep the question, you keep the conversation very much oriented toward the person, like toward work-related ways that you can support.
So Jennifer, have you seen a small business handle this in a very well thoughtful manner in terms of, I don't know, organizing a session? Have you seen things that could inspire people on the line?
Yeah, so a small business, yes, I have. So we recently were asked to go to kind of a startup or that sort of thing, and we provided a session for the employees. I don't know how small you're talking about, but I think that was like 25, maybe 30 people. That seems small to me, but maybe that's not small. But certainly we recently did a kind of a mental health and resiliency. We did one for the managers and then one for the employees. Sessions kind of thing. So individual sessions have been organized, and we can tailor what we do. But so that tends to be what I always suggest to people, is that take a really good look at kind of what you have and see where the gaps are, and then try to either look online to fill those gaps, or give us a call and we'll help you, we'll help you fill those gaps in a customized kind of way.
So Jennifer, it looks like we have the problem that I described to you on Monday,
Okay.
that people cannot unmute themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a question in the chat room. Some employees deal with mental health by withdrawing from everything, including the workplace. How should I deal with someone who's working remotely and just disappears for a while?
That's a tough one for sure. And yep, that's entirely correct. Some people become kind of more vocal when they're stressed or when they're dealing with kind of challenges. Other people do withdraw. And again, there's no magic bullet necessarily, but it becomes a kind of reaching out regularly, but not in a way that seems kind of like you're hounding the person, if you can understand what I mean. So reaching out and indicating that, in as respectful a way. I've noticed that your emails are going left unanswered, or you're not responding to the messaging, or, phone. And what I always would suggest as well is start with a phone call instead of an email or a text message. If you are concerned about somebody withdrawing, or somebody, withdrawing from kind of their work responsibilities, or withdrawing from the work environment, like not the work environment physically, but their work from home, would be to reach out and see if you can get them on the phone. Because I think there's that connection when we're talking to somebody, as opposed to trying to do it over texting or email, but just kind of checking in regularly, but not kind of multiple times per day, unless that is needed, unless that's needed from a work or a performance perspective, or getting tasks done. But if you're doing it from a concern and from a checking in and wanting to help things make it better, I would say just like regularly on a daily basis, checking in and saying, this is what I'm seeing. Is there anything that I can do to, again, here from a work perspective, to support you, to help?
So what if the person doesn't respond at all? So at one point, do you call family? And
yeah, so if you have access to that, I don't know, but certainly if you do have access to somebody that may have access to that person, I'm using the word access a lot, but yes, I would. If they've completely fallen off the radar, I would absolutely try to figure out any way that I could reach the person through somebody else, because that is kind of something that does need to be followed up on. That's like if they've completely fallen off, it may be that it's not a crisis situation, but it's possible that it is. So yes, if you have, I suppose in maybe their file, you would have somebody to contact, I would absolutely do so. But doing it in a respectful way that protects privacy as well. So just saying, I'm having a difficult time reaching this person. I'm wondering if you could help connect me. Not, we haven't seen the person, we haven't heard from the person, where are they, what's going on, but rather just, I've had some difficulty connecting, and I'm wondering if you can help me connect with that person and see what it goes, how it goes from there. Does that help?
Evan, are you able to unmute yourself? Does that help? Unmute.
Yep. Yep. It does. Help to verify what I was feeling on a few things. It's so difficult when it's not something that you can communicate.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose you could also, Evan, you could indicate to the person that you have no idea what is going on, but that here are some resources. If there is, like, say, I don't know what is happening, and I'm not making any assumptions here, but just in case you're struggling, here are some resources that might be helpful. And you might include, like, I don't know exactly where you're located, Evan, but it might include even like, some of the things that I've listed, but even a crisis line kind of phone number as well for your area. Like there might be a 188, like a 188 number. And again, couching that with saying, I'm not sure what's going on, but just in case, you know, I'm concerned and here are some resources.
Great, thank you.
So we have two other questions in the chat room. Have you seen any practical tips for parents worth passing along?
So I guess my question would be for parents who are like needing to go back to the workplace or parenting currently. Yeah. So go ahead.
Erica, do you want to, a parent stuck at home with the kids?
Stuck at home, that's exactly how it feels, right? Okay, so one of the things that one of my colleagues did a parenting while working from home kind of seminar recently that I attended and gathered some information, because I don't know whether you just noticed, but my 9-year-old just walked past. So I'm here at home working, doing the homeschooling and parenting thing. But one of the things that I thought was a really helpful tip was kind of having, and this, I know we're kind of 9 weeks in, but having a bit of a family meeting where we could kind of do a plan with respect to who's on deck when, and doing a little bit of a divide and conquer if possible. Some of us are single parents. We don't have necessarily a person with us or to help, but if there is, being able to say, this is kind of when you're on deck for the parenting, this is when I'm at work, and vice versa. So coming up with a plan, a structured plan, but with flexibility, because from day to day things might change, and making sure that everybody's really clear on when you're not available. And if possible, there's 2 extra things that I'll just touch on briefly. If possible, carving out kind of protected time when you're not trying to divide yourself between homeschooling or parenting and work, but seeing if you can, you know, even carving out kind of, if it can't be an hour, then maybe even a half an hour of protected time. Can you get up a bit earlier, or the dreaded working later, in order to get a bit of that protected time if you can't do it during the day? It's always better to do it during the day from a self-care perspective, keeping things kind of within the regular workday if you can, but figuring out ways to kind of have a very focused period of time every day. And that'll vary, the duration that you can manage will vary from person to person. Second thing, essential, I would say, one of the things that saved kind of me, I think, is what I call mind, body, and soul time. And it's not I don't call it, I actually learned it from a woman in the States named Amy McCready, where I spend more time than this, but my goal is to, during the day, spend 2 periods of 10 minutes where I am fully engaged with my kid, where we are doing whatever he wants, as long as it doesn't involve screens, but playing Lego or doing whatever it is. I have no phone. I'm not talking to my partner. If you have another kid, you're not necessarily interacting with, but totally focused. I call it Adam time. My son's, instead of mind, body, and soul time, my son's name is Adam, and we do Adam time twice a day for 10 minutes. And what that does is it gives him a boost of attention, right? Where I'm fully focused doing what he wants. And it also gives him a boost of power, because he gets to decide what we do during that period of time. And I find that after that 10 minutes, I can get work done for, you know, it depends, it varies. But those would be my 2 top parenting things. But we do have other kind of things, and I'll see if I can maybe send something on the parenting and while working from home as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's much appreciated. The other question we have, that's something that other people on the line may also want to chime in. So, what is the current temperature in the industry for business restructuring how they work? Are they planning to just get back to normal? Are they considering changing business so people can work from home more often or once a week, etc.? Like you said, people have gotten a taste for working from home, and they may not, or they may work better from home. What should businesses consider in this case?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'll leave the temperature of the industry to somebody else to answer, because I know like kind of overall what I'm seeing, but I can maybe address the second piece. And that is, I am seeing a combination of people who are saying they really want to get back to work because they feel like they can't do their full suite of tasks as easily at home. But I am dealing with or working with some people who have demonstrably better results working from home from a performance productivity perspective. And what I'm seeing, and I can't speak for all of the industry, but what I am seeing is a fair bit of flexibility regarding that. And I think people overall, organizations are being very careful to kind of give people the option, at least in the early stages of or phases of moving back to working, to being back in the studio or back in the workplace, to giving people options. And I think that's probably an important place to start is to give options. And then if you have the person who's really reluctant over time and they're not seeming to come along with the wanting to get back into the workplace, maybe having some more detailed conversations about what is it that is creating the anxiety or the concern about getting back into the workplace, and suggesting, again, working maybe with some of the government funded programs, or, you know, with an occupational therapist. So I have no doubt, and I'm already quite busy with people booking appointments because they are worried about getting back to the workplace. And so I'm going to work with them on that anxiety or that distress.
So in terms of the temperature of the industry, I'll start, but I know the people on the line may have other opinions. But what we hear is that people are trying to keep employees as long as possible working from home right now, because there's so much confusion about legal obligation or, you know, risk to employees. What if people have to take the transit system to get to the office? So there's a lot of unknowns. So people are trying to do that. But to Jennifer's point, they're starting to think about how can we provide options. And most of them are telling me that work from home is going to definitely be a bigger part of their operations in the future. So anyone on the line wants to chime in? I'm about to point at people. So before I do that, I know somebody would have an opinion about it on the line. Okay, so I'm not going to force people, but you know, if ever you want to chime in, that would be much appreciated. There is another question. Okay, so with some companies considering going permanently work from home, do you have any recommendations on how to be checking in with people on a regular basis about their mental health? It can be difficult to know how everyone is doing when working remotely.
Okay. Yeah, well, one of the things that we've figured out over the last, say, 8 or 9 weeks, and by we, I mean we as, I think, the broad we of organizations, as well as my company doing the actual support, but the organizations that we're supporting, is it's important to kind of have group check-ins, but it's important to add to those group check-ins individual check-ins, because I don't know about you, but I don't know how anxious I would be to say, I'm not doing very well on a group call, right? With, you know, 10 of my colleagues or what have you. So, you know, what we started off very early on was organizations kind of doing group check-ins, which I think is important, because I've learned a lot from, say, my colleagues with group check-ins about how they're managing, say, parenting and working from home, but also doing it individually as well, and doing it regularly, and persisting, even if the person doesn't kind of seems a bit resistant. And I don't mean persisting in an obnoxious way or in a way that seems overbearing, but just continuing to check in and even asking kind of that each person, would you prefer kind of to do this by text or messaging? Would you prefer a phone call? Just to do a quick check-in and just to, you know, make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to support you from your perspective.
There's another related question.
Okay.
So one of the scariest things that I write to my employees is, hey, do you have some time to talk today? I know it's better to explain why we're meeting, but the explanation is the whole point of the dedicated conversation. If I just wrote the purpose, it would negate the need to talk. How do I phrase this better?
Oh, that's a tough one. I might need some help on that one. So is there a way, I guess I'd ask the question, instead of answering a question, I'll ask a question back and say, is there a way of framing it where you give at least a sense of what the conversation is about without giving all the information that you want to discuss? So you have like a topic area or a bit of a, instead of it just being quite, because I know that if my initial reaction might be the same, and I work on balanced thinking and not thinking of the worst case scenario. But I think if my manager said, do you have time to talk today? I might be like, uh-oh. So, but if she said, do you have time to talk today about X, but without getting into X?
That's plus last month's, right?
So, Evan, do you want to comment on Jennifer?
That's true. Nothing is scarier than getting a text from your manager or your boss that says, hey, do you have time to talk today? It's equally as scary.
Yep.
Oh no, what are they going to say? So I like to drop that little line of what it's about anyways.
Yeah.
I think what Erica is saying as well is that asking for a regular quick chat. So if it's something that you do more often, then there's a less aspect of terror that comes across your face when, your phone goes off like, let's chat. And you're like, oh my God, it's over.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And I regularly scheduled things are a little less kind of anxiety provoking. So, and I would actually add that to my answer of the individual one-on-ones. It may be that when we're working remotely, we need to amp up our one-on-ones. We need to do them more regularly. So if you were doing it kind of ad hoc or every 2 weeks, if it's going to become a work from home thing, you might need to do it weekly.
Okay. So basically, Evan is, thank you all, by the way, for all the tips in the chat. And Evan is saying, sometimes it's just because I want to surprise them with a good news. So
can you say good news at the end?
So any other questions? We have like 3 minutes left before we have to wrap up. Or comment. Or Jennifer, is there anything that you feel that you need to convey in addition to what you've said?
No, I think I said it, again, I know Stephanie said, we just need a few slides, and I brought it into like 11 slides, which might've been more than what you were hoping for, but I did have a lot to say. And I think I said most of what I feel like I would want to say. Yeah, but good questions and good comments and additions. So thank you.
So one last question, I guess. We're going through a very strange period, but humans are resilient. What do you think, how do you think we will adapt as humans over the next months?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think that we will adapt. I think we are very resilient. I have a lot of faith and optimism in the resilience of people. Throughout history, we can look at things where things have been very uncertain and very challenging, and for the vast majority of us come through it okay, right? But I think if I was to give one tip as to how we can come through this, like humanity in general, humans in general, and I don't usually do this. I like to offer lots of tips, and whatever grabs you is what I think you should work on. If I was to give you one tip to give to yourself as well as your employees, it would be mindfulness and meditation. I think going forward, mindfulness and meditation is going to be essential from a mental health perspective, dealing with the weeks and months to come. Just being able to spend some time doing some mindfulness or some meditation, I think is going to pay off in a huge way. And that is coming from somebody who probably a year ago was like, yeah, meditation's great for those people who really want to do it, but I don't know whether it's essential. I now have changed my tune to say that I think that it is the #1 thing that I would add to my repertoire of self-care if I wasn't already doing it. So I think we will come through this. Things will be different. There'll be, you know, bumps in the road, but we're going to do okay. And we're actually going to learn a lot, and some very positive things will come. We'll figure out new ways of working, creative ways of working. So that's my prediction.
So thank you. I think that's a very positive end to our talk. And I have to tell you, this was very useful and much appreciated by everybody on the line.
Oh, good.
So I will wrap by saying, if you have ideas for next sessions, please send them to Stephanie@interactiveontario.com or me, Lucy@interactiveontario.com. We're still working at trying to find a lawyer that can help us figure out the legal obligations linked to return to work. So we're working on that one, but any other suggestions, please do send that to us. And again, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everybody on the line.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye.
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 Very much.
Hi, everybody.